The second ever event in Dandy's World is currently going on, with it being Easter themed. Similar to the previous Christmas event, there's a shop with 4 tunes and twisteds with one of each rarity, being bought with a new event currency, as well as having a new map that shows up every 5 floors with the guaranteed event tune, with floor 20 having the main guaranteed. Opinions on the last event are pretty split, so is this event any better? Starting off with the small stuff, the lobby has had some decorations added to it. The tree in the middle is now pink, with Dandy's shop having some eggs representing the mains around. The empty room has turned into Bassie's shop, being filled with Easter decorations, including a poster for each of the Easter tunes and a TV showing a new animation. The UGC room also got some of the posters added, plus some small Easter decorations. All this is just a neat thing to fit with the limited time event. To buy the new tunes and costumes, you need baskets. Despite them having eggs in them, I know it would make more sense to be called that, and have the basket just be part of that design. But getting them isn't a big deal. They work exactly how the ornaments did last event, which were not too bad after the change, with you still having to play a good amount to buy everything, if you don't use Robux. But with the prices, it's not too much. I feel like the costumes are the only thing that feels too expensive, since you can more ichors and baskets in around, so they should be less, but it's not a big deal. I mentioned costumes were added, so let's talk about those real quick. Eggson has some pretty cool colors, clearly meant to be a painted egg since he is Easter themed and his face feels more fitting. Not something I absolutely love, but I enjoy it. Flyte is pretty good. I really like the colors of white and pink with the blue on his wings and under his eyes. Koko's is another nice one with a nice blue color and a pretty dress to go along with that color. Bassie's is another one with more pale, lighter colors on both her body, as well as the flowers turning into light blue and green. Then, out of the 2 non-Easter tunes to get skins, first is Yada. I really enjoyed the blue and white with pink on as well. It's a nice skin. Louis also got a skin for some reason, but I love him, so he deserves it and it's okay. His skin has some odd color choices that don't look amazing together. It is just kinda ugly, but I enjoy it. To start, I will go over each of the new Easter-themed twisteds. Going in order of rarity, Eggson is the common of the group. Similar to how Rudie was, he has nothing special going on with him, working the same as Box and Poppy and Cosmo, so he has a walk speed of 10, chase speed of 18. This is pretty boring, honestly. I get that he is a common, but even just a small change like being similar to Shrimpo by being slower with slightly longer attention. This is the same feeling I have about Rudie though, so no real comparisons here. The biggest comparison is between the uncommon and rare twisteds added during these events, so let's go over the new ones. Flyte is an uncommon twisted that is stated to be similar to Flutter, just at a lower speed due to being an uncommon instead of rare. Being like Flutter, Flyte never stops moving around, unlike the Twisted, and has a very high walking speed being 17, with a 17.5 chase speed, being slower than the average coin by just a tiny bit, having both stats just 1 point under Flutter's. Then the rare Koko is similar to Toodles by having a very low attention span, but a higher speed, just being a bit more threatening with a speed of 21 instead of 20, faster than not only Toodles but Shelly as well. But her walk speed is only 8, being the same walk speed as Scraps and Goo. Now, which update had the better twisteds? I'll come back to the mains due to them not having similarities between the other event twisteds, the same way the uncommons and rares do. So, unlike Flyte and Koko, who are similar to other twisteds with either higher or lower stats based on their rarity, the Christmas event brought in twisteds with unique abilities, but are they really good is the question. Both Ginger and Cole have incredibly long attention spans, Ginger being slow, but it can be difficult to get away due to her 10-second attention span, and Cole is faster but has only 8-second attention. However, if you find her in a blackout, death is nearly guaranteed. Cole's speed raises to the same as Pebbles when in a blackout, the most threatening twisted in the game. Not only that, but she has no footsteps to signify if she may be nearby, and keeps her attention span of 8 seconds, being double of These are both the unique abilities, but not the most enjoyable due to their annoyance, and Cole being way too much of a problem if you find her in a blackout. I personally prefer the slightly changed versions over whatever Cole is. Ginger is interesting at least because her speed is very low, but Cole is just too much. I would say Ginger is a better twisted than Flyte, especially since that gimmick feels meant for a rare, which is why Flutter is one. But even with that, Ginger is just more interesting to play during. Then between Cole and Koko, Coco's better for sure. Even if she's just a more threatening Toodles, she's at least not completely awful in blackouts like Cole. And even outside of blackouts, Cole's not that great of a twisted even if she has a pretty neat design. With those two done now, it is time to move on to the main twisted of these events, being the newly added Bassie as well as Bobette for comparative reasons. Bassie has a walking speed of 10 and a chase speed of 19. Nothing too special with that being the same as Astro and close to Via 18 and Shelly at 20. Of course, this makes sense with Bassie's ability having there be spots around the map with flowers to slow you down when you go around them. Her ability can be a problem when trying to escape twists, but not all the time, similar to Astro's Tide effect. Unlike V, who just gives slowness so she's slightly slower, and Shelly's ability only affects machines, so she is slightly faster, Bassie is just balanced around the main tunes at her level quite well. However, what about Bobette? Well, she has a walking speed of 8, but a very fast chasing speed of 23, being a bit under Pebble's 25. She also has a very tiny ability with her hearing whenever someone has picked up an item or ornaments, which are always in the game. This makes her also feel more balanced like Bassie. Since her ability won't give you much issue, she's pretty fast, but still exists, so she's Pebble fast. It's hard to compare these two because they're honestly both pretty good twisteds when it comes to their gameplay. Plus, similar to Ginger, they are unique while also being a little much in ways to make the game more interesting during event times. I can't really pick one that is just better for the game. They're both pretty good twisteds and pretty good additions to the game. Overall, this event has another common twisted that's boring, a pretty good main, and 2 more twisteds similar to others that work. But whether that is better or worse than the insane twisted from the previous event depends on the person, I feel like. While on the topic of the twisteds, what about the trinkets you get by finishing their research? Starting off, Eggson's trinket is the Egg Radar, which shows you where baskets are on the map, being this event's version of the Festive Lights and completely useless after the event ends. Not that it helps during the event, it really isn't that hard to just find the baskets on the ground, so you're just wasting a trinket slot using the Egg Radar. I wish that instead of this, Eggson and Rudie had actual trinkets. If anything, why not have you be given, or you can buy a trinket from Dandy that detects event currencies. That way, it wouldn't feel like a waste, and you could be useful for new events at this very least. Then, Flyte's trinket is actually pretty good, being the scrapbook, which lowers your stealth by 5%. This works very well for distractors, so you don't have to worry about tombs with the same stealth as you. Pebble especially is really fast already, so Scrapbook lets him not have to use his bark as often, and save it for when it is really needed. It can also be good on other distractors if you don't care about not having speedy shoes, since outside of One Heart Louie, the other distractors are at 4-star movement speed. Still very useful on any distractor though. Ginger's trinket is also pretty good honestly. It can be pretty good for Rudie, and is usable on other tunes with an active ability. It is fun and sometimes helpful trinket even if not as good as Scrapbook. However, Scrapbook is just a better call because that lowers movement speed by 20% and stealth by 10%. So it was only maybe usable on Pebble, but it was not worth the sacrifice of speed for stealth. This is, of course, another challenge trinket like Brick, so it isn't a huge deal, but a good trinket would have been nice. On the topic of rare trinkets, Koko's trinket is a little odd. The glazed fondant bag extends the duration of any candy item by 4 seconds. This is a fine trinket, decently helpful in a solo where you can get more candy, but it only finds use on Koko and Yada outside of those. Koko's ability drops bonbons that are already pretty good, so extending the time has to be pretty strong, even if it was ghoulish before. Then Yada drops tons of candy, so naturally you'll get plenty used to the trinket. So I think this is a pretty cool trinket to be added, even if not the best. I could see people wanting to use this, and while you could use a trinket that always helps your survival, it still is pretty fun, especially on Koko and Yada. Now, onto the main trinkets. Bassie's trinket is the Whispering Flower, which highlights all items on the ground during panic mode. This is bad because that is the worst time to be grabbing items because of the time limit. Plus, there's a good chance you would have already found all the items on the ground if there is anything useful. I think highlight items is a cool idea, but panic mode is the worst time for that to happen. Bobette's trinket isn't a huge improvement with it refreshing your cooldown when you enter the elevator, but the elevator lasts for at least half the longer abilities, but those longer abilities either don't need to be used at the start, or like V, shouldn't be used near the end so it's ready for the next floor, making it not that helpful. Both events have 2 basically useless trinkets, with the Easter event having a pretty good one alongside the fun trinket with niche use, while the Christmas event has only 1 good trinket with another trinket that barely helps you. Alright, we are all finally on to the actual tunes that you play as in the update. Once again, starting with Eggson. He has the full 3-star stats, being the same as Poppy, Boxin, and Rudie. Back in the Christmas event, I was more okay with Rudie having basic stats, especially since he had an ability that made him feel different from the starters, but Eggson not so much. Not only is he an old man with a cane, so it would make sense for him to be slow, but his walking animation doesn't even fit his speed. Plus, his passive ability just has him complete 10% of each machine he goes onto, which makes him another extractor with basic stats like Boxton. However, despite the disappointment, he does still have some use since with basic stats, he has no real weakness. Using that to your advantage, you can have a decent extractor with good survivability. His passive also makes him a decent extractor due to machines taking less time. He also could run around and use his ability on all machines so that any Toon can do it a bit quicker. There isn't a ton of strategy for playing with him other than that though. Base stats, he can't do a lot other than extract, and he has no ability to help with that, unlike Rudie. The only real strategy is trinkets, where I would say use magnifying glass on him. It's the best trinket to use for fast extraction, as long as you can actually hit the skill check. If you don't have magnifying glass, anything to help with extracting that in blue bandana can help. Then the second trinket is definitely more up to the user. However, some IDs are Participation Award to make them a faster extractor, V's Remote if you would rather finish a machine instantly over general faster extracting. Pink Bow can help if you would prefer better survivability, although because his stats, if you would rather a different trinket that would be less useful, you could. Just keep in mind it won't be as useful. Eggson as a Toon doesn't offer a lot. And as I said, his stats are boring, so without an interesting ability, he kind of just blends in with the other starter tunes when it comes to his uses. I also don't personally find this character all that interesting when he's just talking about eggs. Rudie has the more clear delusion when it comes to Christmas, and also just feels more like a jolly attitude. However, he's good when giving advice, and I like him quite well during that. Flyte is interesting with him having 4-star movement speed and extraction speed, while he has only 2-star skill check and stamina, leaving stealth at 3 stars. This makes him pretty similar to Tisha due to having nearly the same stats, just swapping extraction speed and skill check. He also has an ability similar to Tisha with him creating a gust of wind that stays on the ground for a few seconds, that increases speed of those who walk in it, including Flyte himself. To balance this out with Tisha's ability, they both last for 5 seconds, but Tisha gives a 25% boost, while Flyte only gives a 15% boost. This makes him pretty interesting, similar to Tisha with him being a distractor, support, and extractor. When it comes to extracting, he's a little less starter friendly due to having a lower skill check, but I would say skill checks don't get super difficult until 1 star. If you're wanting to use him for extraction, magnifying glass is pretty good to help him do machines even faster. Then I personally like V's Remote over Participation Award on 2-star skill checks, since the boost is still not massive, and he extracts fast anyways. And you can also take advantage of his speed with Dog Plush, even when he's not distracting to be able to get away from common tunes easier. Or use with Speedy Shoes or Scrapbook to go fully into distracting as him if you would prefer that. He plays a role as a support, which you can just push him into better with trinkets. Using Ghost Snakes and maybe Sweet Charm, if you want to use both, can help him get gusts out morales and support the team. Or you could use something like Pink Bow to get teammates faster to help them. You could also use Peppermint Icing on him if you're going to be using his ability a lot, since that may help Rue run around more and get more stamina if you need it. Gust also has something weird with it, where it can work as an object sometimes. Usually can be used on machines to block Twistage from seeing you, or it can be used to block Goober Scraps' attack. Which, this has actually been patched out now, but it's still really cool, and I got, there's one really good clip with it, so I still want to mention it. Flyte can really do a lot similar to Tisha, who's already amazing to know on her own. There are just a lot of different strategies and ways you can use him. Like, personally, I like using Dog Push and Magnifying Glass and Extractor, but there are tons of trinket combos that work well on him. I also don't think he'll fully take Tisha's role due to different skill checks, so players may have a preference from that. And if they want to get the speed themselves, or give others a faster speed boost. He also is pretty interesting as a character with him being Flutter's older brother, and having some sort of theme around memories, with his trinket setting memories are bringing you down, and he mentions them in one of his elevator dialogues. We also see with a dialogue with Bassie and another with Flutter, plus another of his elevator dialogues that he doesn't seem to use his wings often, unlike Flutter, which is why we see him run around and use his wings to extract, instead of kicking the machines and flying around like Flutter. He also does talk, which is a nice way of showing that Flutter can't talk because she just doesn't instead of not having a mouth. I believe this has been confirmed, but not everyone's gonna know about this, so this is a pretty cool way of showing it. Flyte is just a pretty fun character, and quite fun to play as, with many different ways you can play as him. There isn't much to compare between him and Ginger, since they are pretty different. If anything, they're just similar to other tunes, and give a new angle of gameplay, which I think is pretty cool to have, and they aren't too similar for it to be a problem. Koko is pretty unique with her having 4-star movement speed, but also 4-star stealth, so she can only really distract with a team who can easily communicate. Then she has 2-star stamina and extraction speed, with 3-star skill check. Her ability allows her to drop a bonbon on the floor that you or a teammate can pick up. Using it gives a 50% extraction speed boost and a 25% speed boost for 5 seconds, basically being an extraction and speed candy put together, having 2 different uses. This makes Koko a support tune that should be giving bonbons to your team, whether that's slow tunes who need up speed, or slower extractors that could use the boost. Although you can also keep the bonbons, which I like to have for the extraction speed, since poor extraction is low poor. There is also another thing you can do with them, giving the bonbons to Sprout for extra tips, which can be effective since it also helps with getting machines done at a quicker pace with his not great extraction abilities. She won't do as good of a job as Yata when it comes to giving Sprout extra tips, but it still is an option you have if Koko is preferred. Koko, similar to Flyte, has lots of different trinket combos due to her stats and role. Firstly, there's extraction trinkets being magnifying glass, participation awards since her skill check is a decent 3 stars, so if you want to focus on extracting you could always use that combo. Remote also works since she's a support, you can still provide some help by finishing machines. I also enjoyed dog flesh on her so that if I'm seen, I can easily outwalk most twisteds, but I wouldn't recommend speed issues since she's a great distractor. If you want to help her ability, Ghost Snakes is pretty good with a sweet charm as a secondary, so that you can have plenty of bonds out to the team. Peppermint icing could get some use, but isn't something I would recommend, and if you're gonna be using your own bonbons, a lot of the glazed fondant pack can help make it better of an item. Outside of gameplay, Koko is a pretty cool Toon, just someone who enjoys helping from what we see. There is some other stuff around her, but that relates to Bassie, so I will hold off for now. I do think that it's interesting how Flyte looks out for her possibly being the wrong person, and her interaction with Yada is pretty neat since they both are candy-based Toons. Koko even needs to have a Yada survive 20 floors with her for mastery, so they are pretty neat. Although to my knowledge they only have one interaction, and I wish they gave them two instead, to show a little bit more of them together. I can also say Koko's is a huge step up from Cole, who literally just has Flutter stats and Hill's old ability, which is not all that helpful. Koko is a lot more creative with her stats and ability, as well as being much better since Flutter is already deemed to be not the best distractor due to having 3-star stuff without the speed or ability of Pebble. Not much else to say about Koko just yet, so let's move on. Finally, onto this event's shopkeeper and main, that being Bassie, a very unique Toon to play as, and while she seems bad at first, she is quite fun. Bassie has 5-star movement speed, 4-star stamina and stealth, 2-star extraction speed, and 1-star skill check. For her abilities, Bassie's passive gives her 4th inventory slot, so she can carry more items, and her active lets her drop item in her inventory onto the ground for other Toons with no cooldown at all. Now, Bassie may seem a little confusing because her stats are like a distractor, good movement, and poor extraction, but her stealth is not just a basic, but higher at 4 stars. So, while you may think she can do not too much, I consider you to think about another Toon with similar stats, just a little swapped around, that being Sprout. Honestly, I'm shocked at that she would suck at first coming from a Sprout main who doesn't distract us him. Bassie's role is to give items to the team, and can even hold on to things like healing items for when no one needs them. And it's not like you can't extract since she will still get it done even if she's quite slow. And you may struggle to hit the skill check, but her survival is pretty good. Now what trinkets do you use? Well, V's remote isn't obvious because you can help with getting machines done, and her survival is already pretty good. Now I think the best secondary trinket for her is Dandy Plush. In fact, I actually thought about that before I ever saw anyone use it on her, so that way you can buy good items easier and give them to the team if anyone needs it, since she really doesn't need to stop as badly with her already high stats. Now for the other trinket options, there are a couple to discuss. Firstly, dog flesh can work, but unless you're going to distract something like Pebble, you should be fine since only 5 twisteds have a chasing speed higher than 20, which is Bassie's base walking speed. Those being Pebble, as I mentioned, Glisten, who should never be active, Bobette and Black Cole, which are not active right now, and Koko, who is only going to be active for so long, and is barely above 20 at 21 chasing speed. I think those 3 are the only particularly good trinkets in her, but there are 2 that I've seen people mentioning. Bone can work as a good dog flesh replacement, maybe even better because of it giving more speed, but you have to keep dropping and picking up items. It can work, and is a fun way of getting more speed, but it's also not gonna be that helpful often. Now, Feather Duster is another one I've seen, but I don't think it's helpful in her. You can get infinite stamina with her, sure, but why do you need the infinite stamina when you could just use a trinket that helps their playstyle more? As I mentioned, you don't need to run away from most twistons to not get hurt, and her stamina is 4 stars, so it's already pretty high. The stamina is not needed that badly when you could use a better trinket on her, also Peppermint Icing doesn't work, so that isn't an easier option either. Now, while I haven't talked about bad trinkets in the others, I'd like to talk on Bassie since there is a reason people may think these trinkets are good. Fancy Purse and by accident Coin Purse are not that great. Dandy Flesh is way better on her since the types we use on the shop, plus those trinkets are just generally really bad in all Toons. Fishing Rod is similar with it being always bad, but technically you could give the items to others even though most of those items you could just find and it's not very likely to get together like Band-Aid, so it's really not worth it. Now, into Bassie as a character, because she's amazing. We can see in the corner of the room on the event map, which will be discussed from a gameplay perspective next, we see a plush of Bassie and a bunch of other words written in ichor or posters marked out, all to say get her. There is also a note saying that Bassie is too dependent on other Toons to be a main, which leads us into her character. While she's friendly with Eggson and Flyte, she isn't really like that with Koko, as we can see by her dialogue when purchasing her, and Bassie being quite cold to her when they talk in the elevator. It can also be presumed that Koko either was going to, or was considered to take the role of main instead, that not only is independent, but even if she helps people, but is also the only non-main Toon to have a plush. The gift store map only has plushies of the base main characters, and then Bobette never actually got one, but in the Easter map, we see plushies of both Bassie and Koko. This is also reflected in their stats and abilities. Both are high speed and high stealth tunes that play a support role when they give items to others, where they lower extraction speed because of their role. However, Koko can use her bonbons on herself, can extract much better with her base skill check, making her a decent solo tune, while Bassie's ability is not helpful when alone, and her poor extraction abilities overall make her one of the worst tunes in a solo run. They both do similar things, even if different, but Koko has the ability to do solos or be independent, which Bass can't be, only good with other tunes, being dependent on them. We can also see that she can be defensive at times with Astro, and doesn't seem to really know her purpose. We see when she talks to V and Sprout. Still does care about her friends though, as we see with Flyte and Eggson, also seems to believe in her own abilities. Also think her and Shelly are an interesting pair, because of Shelly not seeming to feel like a main because of her being ignored, which we see they share in common during their elevator interaction. I'm sure there's a lot more to say about Bassie as a character because she just has a lot going on. So let's finish the tunnel of Toon comparison with Bobette. There isn't a ton of comparisons, they're pretty different, although they are both pretty good survivalists. I do enjoy them both since they're pretty fun to play, though even if they don't seem to be considered as good as the other mains are. But maybe that's just because they're still event tunes despite being main characters. They would only show up during their holidays, so they don't reach as far as the other main characters that would constantly be the main characters. This could also just not be intentional, probably isn't, but hey, it's a neat thing they have in common. Okay, one last thing to discuss, and that is the special event map, working the same as the previous one by showing up every 5 floors with a guaranteed event tune with it being the main on floor 20. It's hard to remember the holiday map since those are hard to exactly think of what they do, unlike the Twisters or Tunes, which the latter I can still play as and enjoy playing as most of them. I will say though that I enjoyed the Christmas map quite a bit and never got too tired of it, but I do think the Easter map is a better layout. They're not really big open areas, are nice. The elevators both have grass areas with a rock in the middle, with another spot like that as well, which are all nice areas for the machines and not too annoying when being chased. The middles, one side has some shells with plushies to create a wall, and there is also a feature in the middle of the other section that are both made well when it comes to having enough space to move around, but it's still possible to get away from being chased without running out of stamina there. Then there are 2 side sections. One has a ramp and some stairs leading around the corner with some machine spots, and while they can be a little annoying when being chased, there has to be a spot that's a little more dangerous, and it's pretty small section. Plus, you can go back into the area mentioned with Bassie to hide pretty easily. Then the other outer area is a small hallway with the entrance to it having a weird island you can use. There's a counter to hide behind, and it leads to the grassy area without an elevator. The map is just pretty good to play on with nothing feeling all that unfair, and it's fun due to it being open enough to have stuff break up a completely blank space. Overall, I'm really enjoying this event. I do decently enjoy the new twists, but the new map and tunes are pretty fun to play for me, and it definitely feels more original than the Christmas event. Maybe outside of the twisted, but they're mostly pretty equal outside of Cole being kinda awful compared to Koko. I'm hoping that later events just improve out of this to make something really amazing, but I'm quite happy with where it is currently.